Tassy. Thank you so much for being here on the Be Love podcast.
Thank you, Sage. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're so welcome. And it's a fun coincidence that Tom Muller was just on last week because you two work together in El Cerrito. You share ministry, and I'm just excited to hear about that and specifically about you. What has called you on this journey that we are having this conversation today? I wonder what you might want to share about how love has called you in your life.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm not sure if you know, but I am starting my ordination path.
I didn't know that. Oh, so love is even like kicking up some gears.
So that whole calling, when you say, how is God leading you in your life? Well, there we go. That's it.
So you've been asking yourself these questions lately.
Well, this came about after a trip to Taiwan. And I even did a couple of sermons on this, but I have a close friend who is Taiwanese, and she was planning a trip, and I've been studying Mandarin for quite a while. I'm still at the very beginning of stages. I just said to her, if you wouldn't mind a traveling companion, I'd be happy to go with you. And so we did, and that was around Mother's Day. And it was one of those just amazing transformational experiences. I mean, that's all I can say. You know how when you had your class on the New Jerusalem and we were reading that book, I think it was one of my sections that has always stayed with me was we receive our messages from God when we are receptive to them and when we are ready for them. And that has just always stayed with me. It was kind of like, hello, Tassy. Okay, so you're receptive now. It was literally every single day. There was what I first considered a coincidence, but these things just kept happening. And I thought, no. There's something going on here. I have no idea what it is yet, but there was something going on because it was every day there was one of these coincidences. And, Swedenborg says everything's connected. And these weren't just coincidences. You got to a point.
Can you tell us about a couple of them?
Well, sure. I'll just say, so I'm going to start and then kind of probably jump a little bit. But last fall, I've been taking Mandarin classes, but it's very difficult to find adult Mandarin classes. They're mostly for kids. But I found one at a local community college, and the teacher just happened to be Taiwanese. All of my other classes have been mainland China Mandarin. So this was fine. So that's interesting. And then this whole idea of kind of going to Taiwan sort of set in. So, okay, well, that's useful. The final project was watching a film in Mandarin and writing a critique. The film I watched had to do with artists in Shenzhen, which is across from Hong Kong, painting these incredible replicas of European artists. In this case, it was Van Gogh. So these folks do these amazing replicas of Van Gogh, and they're sold in very large lots to places like Walmart, or they go back to the Netherlands and they're sold in, tourist kiosks. Okay. So there's that piece. Kind of hold that in mind. So on the plane, my phone dies, not because of my phone, but because I'm stupid and I hit the wrong button. And there was no way to get the phone back. No way. So being without a phone, and of course I'd put on Google Translate, and I'd been to T-Mobile a number of times to make sure everything was going to be just fine. And there's no phone. So no photos, no contacting home. I had to rely on my friend, my traveling partner, to do anything that needed phone work. But an interesting thing happened because without a phone, I realized I had to pay much closer attention. I had to use my senses. I had to see things and hear things and listen to things. I couldn't just take pictures. So I journaled every day and I drew pictures in my really lousy artist ability. And because I had to rely on my friend Karen, I had to become a follower, which is something that you and Tom kind of talked about. I was thinking, wow, there it is again. I had to, my sort of take charge attitude. No, I couldn't do that. I really had to step back and, just say, yes, yeah, okay, fine. That's good. So we started our journey in a place called Sun Moon Lake, which is kind of like Lake Tahoe here. It's a recreational place, it's beautiful, right? Kind of in the center of Taiwan. And we had some tickets to ride a gondola, the air tram. This ended up at an amusement park. I didn't think our tickets got us into the amusement park, but they did. It's like, okay, sure, we'll do that. And so we went on a couple little fun little rides. And then we walked up to the very top where there's a vista point. And there's some like bunkery little rooms up there that you can walk in. One of them was a Muslim pray area. Oh, that's interesting. And then I walked into the other one. It was filled with Van Gogh replicas, exactly the same as this movie I had watched. And then, and I was just, oh, that's odd, because Taiwan, they didn't mention selling
Big place.
things to Taiwan. And then we walked down, and then there was some sort of, very manicured European garden. Okay, yeah, that's fine. So I'm walking down like 2 flights of steps, and Karen's behind me. So I turn around to see if she's okay. And the steps are the canvas for Van Gogh's irises. The whole thing. Like, it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. Okay. So this is coincidence. This is the start of the trip. But it just kind of kept rolling, these things. And from Sun Moon Lake, we went into a very famous national park called Alishan, which is a mountain. Sunrise at Alishan is the thing that you do, and we did. And I think it was later that day, I was out on the balcony. We had a lovely hotel. I was out on the balcony. It looked out into the forest. I was by myself. And I had one of those complete moments of feeling God's presence, seeing this beautiful greenery, hearing the birds, and just feeling like love that is just completely surrounding me. It's like, again, I don't know what's going on here, but there's something. So again, these kinds of things. And then all throughout the trip, I'll mention that there are these incredibly beautiful Buddhist temples everywhere. Taiwan was under Japanese rule up until the end of the World War II. So they built a lot of these very beautiful temples. I was very attracted to them. I wanted to walk in and look at them. And so that's another piece.
Sure.
I was like, what's going on? The people there were so incredibly friendly and kind. I had folks coming up to me on the street saying, can I help you find something? And they would actually walk with me to wherever it was I might be going. It's like, well, this is unusual. Somebody from Texas came up on a bicycle, can I help you? Like, yeah, where are you from? Yeah, I'm from Texas. I'm like, okay. Do you know where? Yeah, I live here. I can help you out. So that was great. No, that's just 2 more things that were just mind blowing. So the very end of the trip, we were invited to visit a Christian university that's just outside of Taipei. Karen's brother is a astrophysicist. He teaches there. So he arranged this tour with the chancellor. And there's always lunch, always a hao-chu, really good food. So we're sitting there, and across from the table are some of the professors, and they introduce themselves to me, and they're from the religious studies department. Okay, that makes sense. And one of them says, I said, yeah, where did you do your Master's of Divinity? UCLA. Really? And then the next one said, yeah, no, I went to Claremont College. Well, I graduated from Santa Monica High School. It's all in Southern California. I'm very familiar with these places. So later on, I'm walking with Mr. Claremont College, and he asks me a little bit about, what I did. I say, well, yeah, I'm from a very small denomination, and I'm on the board of our seminary, which is housed in Berkeley. And he looks at me. He says, yeah, I know Berkeley. And I said, yeah, my church is a little bit north in I know El Cerrito. What? And he says, isn't Hilltop Mall kind of close by? It's like, what? This is like, 5 miles from my house. And then I said, how do you know Berkeley and El Cerrito? He said, well, I went to the GT. And so he studied at the Lutheran seminary. So later on, we're talking, and I just happened to have in my bag, just in case I needed it, this one of my favorite little Swedenborgian books that has quotes and kind of, a little bit about things. And I just said, here's a little bit about Swedenborg. Please share this with your department if you like, if you have and take it. And then I said, oh, and by the way, Swedenborg started out as a Lutheran. So I got points there. Okay. So also towards the end of the trip, we spent like 4 days at what's called Wensway Center. It's a Catholic retreat center. And what's interesting about that is it's very close to a metro stop. So it was very, very convenient, a wonderful place in Taiwan. It was very much like the Burlingame Mercy Center, where the Center for Swedenborgian Studies has often had its meetings. Unfortunately, that closed in October. However, the rooms were very much the same. And, everything was like, gosh, I felt, just at home. And just like the Mercy Center, there's always like little postcards and things, in the room. This is actually Burlingame. This is not Wednesday. Anyway, so, I didn't pay any attention to it until the very last day. I kind of moved my suitcase off the table and I had a look at this. And the Burlingame retreat is run by the Sisters of Mercy, because it's Mercy Center. And I knew that these Taiwanese nuns were probably not Sisters of Mercy, but Sage, they were the Sisters of Providence. I just, it's kind of like, I was like, okay. And then in front of the retreat center, there's this big stone wall, and in the stone wall are these glass cases. And those glass cases, have little advertisements about, the high school that's connected, or the preschool, or the science history day that they're going to have. The very last one was this poem. If you allow me to share, it was in English and in Mandarin. I read it through. It was one of those, okay. I needed to run upstairs, grab my journal, come downstairs, because I couldn't take a picture of it. So I had to write it down. And of course, in doing that, you're writing things down, you become more connected to it. So if I may, this was sort of the crowning glory. It says, one day I asked God for instructions on how to live on this earth. God brought his voice close to my ear and said, be like the sun. Arise early. Do not go to bed late. Be like the moon. Shine in the darkness, but submit to the greater light. Be like the birds. Eat, drink, sing, and fly. Be like the flowers, loving the sun, but faithful to their roots. Be like the faithful dog, but only to your Lord. Be like the fruit, beautiful on the outside and healthy on the inside. Be like the day which arrives and leaves without boasting. Be like the oasis, give your water to the thirsty. Be like the firefly, although small, it casts its light. Be like the water, good and transparent. Be like the river, always moving forward. And above all things, be like the heavens, a home for God. Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. May your gracious spirit lead me into the land of uprightness. Lord, don't let me remain where I am. Help me to reach where you want me to be.
The last line right there. That's it. Oh, Tassy. I feel like you've just given this, yeah, this beautiful snapshot of love moving and of your deep awareness of that.
Yeah, it was, that's why I say it. And these were the kinds of things that would just happen every day. And starting with that loss of my phone, I think, and just
Yeah.
hoping that I have a computer wizard son that,
Mhm.
he'd be able to fix it
Mhm.
when I got home, because, that was like, it took a few days. Oh my gosh, I got to buy a new phone. And what am I going to do? And all that. No, he fixed it when I got home.
Yeah.
So when I got back, I had, it was a few days, and then Renee Machiniak and Robin Ferriman kind of were mentor partners.
Mhm.
Renee is my licensed pastor mentor, and I was relating some of this to them. I said, I really don't know what this is all about. And they kind of smiled. I think they had an idea. And anyway, I think it was within a day or two, I kind of woke up from, a sleep, whether it was a nap or probably early in the morning. And literally the letters MDIV were kind of written across my forehead.
Mhm,
And I
mhm,
said,
mhm,
okay, maybe that's what I need to do. Um, and then in talking with Renee and sharing how, I was so attracted to these Buddhist temples. I would take a hike up a hill and there would be Buddhist temples kind of just stuck in places. And they were always so gorgeous. And she recommended or thought, why don't you think about Buddhists have lots of practices. We Swedenborgians read and talk a lot, but we might not be practice heavy. And so I thought about that and I thought, maybe that is something that I could do is to really look into Buddhism. I mean, I know a lot of our churches are incorporating meditation. That's not an unusual thing. But are there some other practices that could be incorporated um, for whatever purpose that wouldn't raise the eyebrows of our Swedenborgian folks, and cause any problems. Um, but could I, make some sort of a study guide or a list or a pamphlet or something? Um, and then, so when I shared this with Rebecca to find out what's going on at the GTU, I found out, of course, there's the Institute for Buddhist Studies is there as well. So things just kind of started to fall into place. And so I was accepted. And then I did all the paperwork for CAM and they said, okay, that's good. So we get that journey
mhm.
started. Um,
Congratulations,
well,
congratulations.
Thank you. It's one of those things that's exciting, but, kind of scary at the
Sure.
same time. And, I know you and Tom were talking about where is this all going to lead? And I figure, well, I was directed this far. I'll let it go. I had no idea where my licensed pastorship was going to lead either, but that has been a joy and a pleasure. So that's kind of what's
That's what's
going.
alive for you right now. It feels so alive. I mean, the way you shared the story feels so alive. And I'm struck. I mean, I don't we haven't worked together day to day, but from what I know of you, you are very efficient, very capable, very I'm sure if you had had that phone, you would have been taking charge. So, I mean, that does seem like just a beautiful gift from God, from the divine to take that away from you.
Yeah.
I wonder
Actually,
how
yeah,
that
I was gonna say it was kind of liberating too, because
Yes,
because
yes.
you don't, "Yeah, okay, I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to carry it around,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
worry that I lost it or that it
yeah,
fell in a pool," like, "Okay."
yeah. I've had experiences like that, and they're such gifts, and then I what I've discovered later on is then it's like God gave it to you freely, and now I'm curious as you go along this path, will there be times when you choose to give it up? Sometimes it's harder to choose to give it up,
Oh,
but
yeah.
then for it to be taken away from you and just yeah, to be I have also had that experience when we're more open. Yeah, the synchronicities sometimes can just be flying at us from every direction because we are in that flow, that openness. And I don't know, maybe it's about practice, the Buddhism. I mean, I think of also Buddhism is so grounded in I think the deep awareness and knowing that it is our attachments that cause suffering. And that's so much of the heart of the Buddhist faith system, whatever you want to call it. And I definitely
Yeah, I was
feel,
gonna say there's also that similarity in Buddhism of giving up the self, and with Swedenborgians, it's our proprium, so there's
yeah,
also that connection. I'm
very
also
simple.
fortunate that at CSS, and this was another, connection, there is a gentleman who is studying, he's from Taiwan, and
Hmm.
he's studying to get his certificate and apparently has, a study group of, folks interested in Swedenborg in Taipei, so he and I are in communication, so I am hoping to return, at the end of the term, which would be probably May-ish, and go back to Taiwan, stay at the Wensui Center I can't. And, it's great. It's a great place and it's cheap. That's pretty nice.
Maybe start to build this network. I mean, I'm thinking a lot about the new church as a global reality. What is it to create this network of communicating with people who are different, but also the similar? And Swedenborg's message is so so universal in so many ways. Yeah.
And Guard Perry had a class through CSS, that ended a few months ago on the glorification of the human Jesus. And one of the folks zooming in was Robert Hagan from Ghana.
Yeah. From Ghana, sure. Yeah. I've gotten to know Bob a little bit. He's a cool
And
guy.
yeah, and that was exciting too. So anyway, we just, you just don't know what's going to happen, and
We don't
just
know what's going to happen, and we have faith and we have these experiences. And I love hearing that you're called in this new direction, because I do feel like I said to Tom, like, I hope we're here together with whatever's going whatever's going on, to maintain that connection and community. And who knows, we really may be needed in a way we don't even know about yet.
well,
Yeah.
it's so comforting to me to start a process where there are just so many good models, like you
Mm-hmm.
and your mom
Mm-hmm.
and Tom
Mm-hmm.
and Amanda and all the folks that you've had on your podcast. It's like, gosh,
Yeah.
um, to be in the company of these really wonderful people is just anyway.
I'm glad I'm glad you're feeling that fullness as you take this next step, because it does feel like a next step. I
Yes,
mean,
very
you've
much so.
been serving as a licensed pastor for how many years now?
Since I think I was, what is it? The word isn't ordained, but I'm losing what the word is. But as I say,
Consecrated.
consecrated, thank you. 2019, I think. Yes, I have um, excuse me, yeah, I have a rock. A rock that Jane gave me in
Love.
2019. So,
And that initial consecration, what was the stirring force when you made that choice?
oh, good question. Well, like what I mentioned, that happened in Alishan when I was out kind of, just on the balcony looking out at the forest. I think it was 2013. I was actually in Yosemite.
Another beautiful place.
Yes, my nephew was married at the chapel in Yosemite in November. I guess it was 2013 or so, 2013, 2014. And kind of riding back on the bus, I just got this message that said, "Minister, be a minister." And I wasn't ready to do that. I was still working at the adult school, but I remember talking to Jim Lawrence about that and said, I got this kind of message.
Mm, mhm,
What
mhm.
what are the possibilities? And he talked to me about the licensed pastor path.
Yes.
And I said, well, that sounds just about right. When I am ready and able, when I retire, maybe I can follow that. So I retired in 2017 and then started that. So studied with him and then kind of moved on. And yeah. So,
And you've been doing that for about 6 years. I know you do a lot of weddings.
you
What
know,
is the sense of that role, or what this role has been for you over these last 6 years?
well, that's another good question. So I do a lot of the calendaring, the
Yeah,
scheduling of
yeah, you do a lot of the work of
well,
keeping
and
things ordered.
just sort of the office, the office work, and filing the forms that need to be done and writing the checks.
There's a lot of that in churches.
Kind of like we don't have a lot of money. How come we writing so many checks?
Yes.
But what was really good about that, it was really kind of an extension of what I did as a director of an adult school.
Mhm.
Budgeting and managing the funds and directing the staff was kind of my job. So working in the office was just kind of a nice, comfortable place to be. And then we had some musician issues. We kind of lost our musician. And I told Tom, it's like, well, I could kind of fill in. I mean, I haven't played the piano in a long time, but I could at least play a melody, if we need
Mhm.
somebody. And that has actually, I was going to say, for me, I don't know for the listeners, but for me, that has turned into an incredible joy. When you're studying piano, when you're 10 or 11 or 12, practicing is not anything you want to do. But as an adult, It's like, I really enjoy going to Hillside and practicing and well, that beautiful piano. I don't have a piano at home, but practicing. So, so I can play for the church, every once in a while when they need to. So that has also been a joy. But as even Tom said, we just have a wonderful group of people at Hillside. And I've also had just joy of giving some sermons at the San Francisco church when June
Mhm,
Scholl has been absent or, Devin Zuber can't be
mhm,
there,
mhm,
and that's where I started, was at the San Francisco church, uh, back in, like, I think 1983 was when I, visited,
mhm,
and I've had some experiences again there where you just feel like you're in the right place at the right time. Not always, that's again, it's just sort of that feeling of pervasive feeling of love that you get that just says, "Yeah, you're where you need to be."
mhm. Keep keep going, keep going. So when you imagine this next phase, you mentioned you don't know where are you just sort of open-heartedly stepping in? I certainly did. When I went to seminary, I didn't even know really what ministers did. I was very much like, "Well, I don't know. I'm just gonna go with it because this is where the energy is." Are you in that real open
You
place
know,
or vision of
I think I am, and, I've been thinking, Renee does a lot of the youth retreats.
Mhm,
And that was, part of the minister's classes was a youth retreat, and they said, "Well, since you're a licensed pastor, it's not something you need to do." I said, "No, no, no. I really would like to do that." I never went to church camp as a kid, and I just think it would be, a wonderful thing to do, and I understand that the San Francisco church is hoping to host.
I think they're gonna do a California retreat this year. Yeah.
Yeah, and and that actually coincides with the CSS board.
Mhm,
Before that happened, was really kind of thinking about how can we as a board be
mhm,
supportive or
mhm.
more supportive or more active in the role of our youth, the Swedenborgian youth, which, by the way, I had to resign my position on the CSS board. Yeah, little conflict of interest there, but that was also a joy to serve on the board and really see a different perspective. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
how all of this kind of falls into place and how it works. So,
Yeah.
but getting back to your question, yeah, I really don't know where this will lead. I did tell Tom though, I said, I'm not doing this to boot you out of,
Sure.
not my
Yeah.
intention at all.
Yeah. Mhm.
But
Mhm.
you just never know where this will lead.
We kinda have to follow our heart. We had to follow this pull of love wherever it's going. And you've mentioned, you mentioned providence, you mentioned correspondences. You've been stewing in the life of the Swedenborgian Church for a long time. What else about this community or this faith is in your heart or is kind of guiding you along? Would you share anything more about how you perceive it?
I think one of the things that is most meaningful to me really is this concept of uses. And someone asked me a number of years ago, well, how do we show our devotion? I said, well, we show our devotion to God in the actions that we take, I believe. And I was thinking today, well, Helen Barler and Kelly Milne and I were all rainbow girls.
Eastern Star?
And yes, yeah, so Eastern Star and Masons. My grandparents were, in Eastern Star, and granddad was, a Mason, and so all the girls in the family were rainbow girls, and that's all service oriented. And I think that's one of the big factors about Swedenborgianism that I find so important is our intentions and our uses, and even that big concept of loving your neighbor when it can be so difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And keeping that in mind, it's like, no, I don't do that real well all the time. I've got a bit of
Yeah.
a temper, but yeah. Um, but you
Feeling
try.
that pull or following that your particular path. That's often how I think about uses. It's being honoring of the love within you and bringing that into being and taking it seriously. That feels really important and a good way of not falling into the trap of usefulness means, doing all the things that everybody else is telling you to do all the time or um yeah. Because sometimes usefulness is not having a phone and not being
Yeah.
able to do things. Sometimes the usefulness. I would love to sit with that a little more. The taking away of the phone, and I love the way you described how it made you use your senses more and just be more attuned. And honestly, all of that activity feels like mindfulness, which would be a
Well,
Buddhist.
I have to say, in some ways, I kind of felt like Lewis and Clark, so
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
my little journal, and I'm writing what happened every day, and I was pretty disciplined about it, and I'm
Yeah.
sitting, again on one of the little porches outside a hotel room and trying to draw a little picture of, what I see, and here it is, and I haven't looked back at that for a while, but it should be kind of fun to go.
Seems like a lovely practice. I almost feel like I imagine you like leading retreats in the future where everybody puts their phone away and we just go on an adventure through the city and we draw pictures and
That's a great idea,
that
Zane.
would be really fun. It'd be a great youth retreat idea, actually. The kids might
Yes,
like that.
yes.
But just yeah, and that you created your own record of your experience, which also feels very holy, really taking seriously how you were perceiving. Um, and you notice so many things with that
What
intention.
what what you just said about a youth retreat, what could be really fun about that is, okay, here you pass out the journals, and like you said, you stop and let, the students write things down. And then later on, when you have an opportunity to share those, you're gonna get 30 or 40 different pictures of, what it was. It's like, "Oh, I didn't see that," or, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that too." But, what's important to us, what moves us,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
that was always something that I would do frequently when I was teaching junior high. I would show the students a film. I said, "I want you to write down just one thing.
Mhm.
Did you know?" I would say, "Start your sentence, did you know? And you're gonna watch this film, and I want you to just write down one thing that you learned."
Mhm.
And it never failed. So at the end of the film, we would just go around the classroom. It's like, "Did you know?" It's like there were never 2 things the same.
Wow.
But a great way to review,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
without a lot of, stress or anxiety. And so I'm thinking, "Oh, that would be a great thing to do with the youth journals." What do you wanna share?
Yeah. I love that, and I love the idea of developing new practices with you, Tassie, into the
Oh,
future for the Georgian church. I think that's another piece of the church I think about a lot is that the teens often have these really dynamic, interesting, exciting retreats and trips. They are very rarely sitting in churches singing hymns. They're doing we develop a lot of really interesting offerings for them but that we don't do as much for once we get older, if we go back to the traditional model. And I'm always interested in what are some new practices we can do together as adults to engage all these deep spiritual truths that we know to be real, providence and God's presence. And how do we, it feels like they're limitless, the amount of practices that could be useful and enriching to the spiritual journey.
maybe what we need is a Swedenborgian cruise.
I posted something. I forget I didn't use the word cruise, but somebody read it as a cruise and they're like, "I want to go on a spiritual cruise." And I was like, "All right, I'm game. I'm up for that."
Yeah, there was
Totally.
a time, I was a dance class I was taking, and there was a whole bunch of bikers that came
Uh-huh.
to this dance class. It's like,
Yeah.
why are you guys all here?" It's like, "Oh, well, we've got a Harley Davidson cruise coming up called Hogs on the High Seas."
You can't really ride your bike though on the cruise ship. I wonder if they bring them on and take them off at the anyway. Little break from bike riding, I guess,
Yeah,
too.
I think that's a good point, that we sort of seem to save that excursion for
Mhm.
convention.
Yeah.
And maybe, um or when we students have the winter session, when we go different
Yep.
places. Like, I was in
Yep.
Boston last year, and that was just fabulous. It was wonderful. It was a great winter session.
Yeah.
But, yeah, maybe we can kinda think
There's
about.
a lot of ways to get together and there's a lot of ways to follow the call, and I think I'll be excited to hear along the path. I'm glad we're starting with this little snapshot of you heading off to seminary, how you, but how you continue to hold that invitation to give up your phone, to follow, to be attentive. I think that's one of the mysteries of ministry and faith is like the whole point of ministry is following a call that God is making, you know, and then we have a church that has certain intentions about what that is. And hopefully the church is a vessel. And I think it can be a vessel for that call. And there can be lots of rules and, and so it's a very sacred tension to hold, following the call of God, which requires surrender.
As you're talking and saying this, I'm thinking, well, you're using Helen Keller as a model of this is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I think Helen's so interesting because, again, she was a woman, so ministry was not available to her at the time. She was deaf and blind, so even had it been available, you wonder if that would have been a possibility. But she really lived that doctrine of uses and kind of understood that to be to be a person of the new church is to just be who you are and to be with the people you're with and to be and I think I'm really interested in this next phase of our discernment about what it is to be a Swedenborgian church, how we really honor that diversity of ways of serving, ways of celebrating, ways of gathering, ways of practicing. There's so many. And we got to find practices and ways of being that we want to do together. So that's the mystery, right? We don't want to have so many that we're all sitting in our own corner doing our own thing, right? We got to find the things that draw us together. It's good. It's good work. I'm glad you'll be on the journey of doing it with me and with so many others into the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this conversation, Tassie. Blessings on when do you start classes again?
Winter session starts next week, and then the GTU classes, I think, are the first week of February. So we're getting
Okay,
close.
so you're jumping right in. You're jumping right in. Well, many blessings. May God
Thank
be
you.
with you on the journey. Talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Sage. Okay, bye-bye.